Welcome to God wisdom. When the soul grows, the environment revolts. Probably a selected one on the run. Let's get things straight. You are not insane. You aren't overreacting. And you're absolutely not being too sensitive. You're just spiritually allergic to the simulation and your soul. Finally cease trying to be at ease in a location where it was never intended to stay. Here's a bone-chilling truth. Quantum physics research has shown that human awareness has the ability to physically change the outcome of reality at the subatomic level. This implies that if your frequency is too high, you don't just leave harmful situations. You collapse them. You are not simply going for good. You are causing whole systems to short-circuit as you depart. It's no surprise that things have seemed like a battle zone recently. But here's the kicker. This exit is not a breakdown. This is your spiritual graduation. You've been attending a soul university disguised as betrayal, loneliness, and spiritual conflict. You did not fail out. You rose while others remained enslaved to the comfort of cages. You broke the latch and went barefoot through the flames. And now you are set to be crowned. Not in secret or quiet, but in holy resistance. So if you feel like you're ready to leave everything behind, including the city, your career, the people, and previous versions of yourself, believe that pull. It is not fear. Your heavenly Jeep is recalibrating your destiny. Grab your crown, the chosen one. Let's discuss why you're not simply leaving. You are leading the road to the new earth. Number one, you're not fleeing. You are being drawn by a greater magnetic law. You are not going because you are dissatisfied or exhausted. You are leaving because something greater is tugging you. This isn't about running away. It's about being drawn out by something imperceptible yet unmistakable. You can feel it in your bones. You attempted to remain. You've tried to persuade yourself to make it work. You've attempted to shrink, blend in, and compromise. But none of it sits well anymore. It's as if your spirit is whispering, "You are done here." And the more you ignore it, the louder life becomes. Suddenly, the location you once considered home begins to seem like a trap. The air becomes thick. The interactions seem phony. Your spirit begins to reject everything. People, places, even things you used to like. That is not simply restlessness. That is divine extraction in motion. When a chosen one is summoned out of a location, life will shatter all illusions of comfort. You will be unable to endure what you once accepted. You'll realize how much you were giving, how little was being returned to you, and how your energy was being eaten like a free banquet. Nonetheless, no one genuinely saw you. Nobody truly respected what you carried. You were the precious mirror that others refused to gaze into. And now that mirror is being installed. You aren't being theatrical. You are not tossing everything away. You are reacting to a spiritual rule. When your vibration no longer corresponds to the surroundings, the environment begins to evict you. Or rather, the sauce begins to remove you. And it's always gently. It starts with a whisper, then a nudge. The situation then worsens. Breakdowns, treachery, and disappointment. Finally, there is an overpowering want to go. Not because you are weak, but because you have grown out of the falsehood. You aren't fleeing to escape the world. You are going because the world, it cannot withstand your truth. You are being drawn to a world where your light is not depleted. It is acknowledged. You aren't simply departing. You're graduating. And the divine is waiting to crown you on the other side. The second and last test was whether you would remain where you were no longer fed. The true test was not the anguish you experienced. It wasn't betrayal, abandonment, loss, or even loneliness. The actual test was whether you'd remain in a location where your soul was hungry merely because it was familiar, or whether you continue to show up in a room where you're being drained, disregarded, or silenced because you were afraid to go. That is what separated you. That is what proves you were picked. Most people remain. The majority of individuals settle. Most individuals get used to being half alive and call it stability. But not you. You arrived to a point when the desire to remain outweighed the fear of leaving. You knew there was no actual sustenance left where you were. Yet the familiarity of habit continued to entice you. You realized the work was destroying your purpose. You realized the relationship was crushing your soul. You were aware that your quiet and self-sacrifice were benefiting others around you. And you nearly stayed. That demonstrates how strong the illusion is. That is how loud the shame can get when you finally decide to choose yourself. But suddenly something inside you cracked. You stopped bargaining using your instincts. You stopped requesting permission to be free. And that's when heaven realized you were ready. That was the last gate. That moment when you choose to walk away without closure, applause, or anybody confirming your choice. That is when the crown was made. Not after you've succeeded. Not when you were recognized, but when you left empty-handed. Just cling on to your faith. The exam was not about surviving hell. You have already done that. The true test was whether you'd keep thinking it was paradise, since that's all you'd ever known. You chose to depart despite having wobbly legs and no clear map. And that little choice affected your whole future. Number 3. You are one of the first because you have endured the longest period of spiritual solitude without giving up. You are being crowned because you did not only endure the solitude, you stood firm and didn't give in. Most individuals cannot tolerate quiet. They would do everything to escape being alone with themselves. But you sat in there every day, month after month, and year after year. You sat in quiet, perplexity, and grief, feeling invisible and misunderstood. And you didn't reduce your frequency to feel welcomed. That is what makes you distinct. You did not ask to be included. You didn't pretend to be someone you weren't just to get popularity. You didn't start performing only to feel human again. You remained committed even if it cost you everything. The fact is that applause does not elevate selected ones to leadership positions. They're polished in private, while everyone else strives for popularity. You were buried in heavenly obscurity, while others were busy perfecting their image. You were facing your inner demons, healing family curses, overcoming codependent patterns, and speaking with God while no one else was listening. You were not establishing a platform. You were developing character. That is why this crown matches you. You did not inherit it. You earned it with every quiet war and secret sacrifice, and every tear that nobody noticed. You developed the ability to bear the burden of leadership without being crushed by ego. Most people would have lost their minds in your situation, but you did not. You continued turning up to life with no praise, no support, and no assurance that anything would ever change. You held the faith even when it didn't seem reasonable. You created yourself from the ground up with nothing but raw grief, tenacious hope, and spiritual tenacity. That's why you're among the first to be crowned. Not because you had the loudest voice, but because you proved yourself quietly. You were trusted with isolation. Now you may be trusted with influence. And now that the moment has come, no one can dispute who you have become. Number 4. You were the only person in your lineage who decided to heal rather than conceal. You were never battling only for yourself. Every breakdown, every healing experience, every time you chose truth over comfort, it wasn't just personal. You carried the weight of generations. Pain that began long before you were born was there in your blood, floating quietly through your family like background noise that no one dared to face. But you've heard it. You felt it. Instead of dismissing it like everyone else, you turned around and confronted it full on. That's what made you unique. You were not the strongest on paper. You were not the loudest, the oldest, or most qualified. But you were the one who said no. No to emotional avoidance and quiet about abuse. No, we won't speak about that culture that protected dysfunction. You stopped hiding behind survival mechanisms that everyone else used as armor. As a result, the conflict ended with you. You violated contracts that your forefathers unintentionally signed. You questioned belief systems that were accepted as law. You questioned actions that were seen as usual, even if it made you the black sheep. The fact is that seclusion was not punishment. It was an initiation. The family did not banish you. Spirit made you unique so that you could accomplish what others couldn't while they chose to cope. You chose confrontation over burying their grief. You dug yours up and detoxed from them. You rewired the fundamental foundation of your ancestry. Now that you're going, it's more than simply moving locations or breaking up. You're severing decades of repurposed anguish. You are avoiding habits that might have ensnared your future children as well. This is not merely movement. It is emancipation. You aren't betraying your lineage. You're repairing it in the most drastic manner conceivable by refusing to carry something that was never yours in the first place. You are not just leaving because of this. You're moving up to number 5. You were never supposed to repair the system. You were supposed to outgrow it loudly and shamelessly. You were never intended to fit in. And deep down, you knew it. From the very beginning. Something about the way this universe functioned seemed odd to you. Rules, habits, and expectations. They never sat, correct? Not because you were rebellious, but because your spirit could not accept falsehoods. The machine attempted to program you anyhow. It advised you to ignore your instincts, ignore your calling, and become what is currently acceptable. It taught you to dread your own voice, to distrust your abilities, and to idolize systems based on conformity. For a time, maybe you did. Perhaps you played along. But your spirit never left. And the stress you carried was not a sign of weakness. It was resistance. They made you believe that your mission was to repair what was broken, to remain within damaged areas and fix them. But the reality is, you were never meant to fix something that was never intended for your kind of light. The system was not designed for souls like yours. It was designed to silence people in order to exploit, analyze, dissect, and take from them. And the greatest trick it ever pulled was enticing you to remain just long enough to exhaust yourself attempting to cure it. However, selected ones were not assigned to be janitors in collapsing castles. You came here to outgrow the machine. Loud, shamelessly, and truly. You're here to create something fresh, holy, and impenetrable by greed, manipulation, or fear. You weren't asked to sit at their table. You were asked to create a whole new table, one that did not need you to shrink to fit in. That's why the system began to push back harder. The more awake you become, it knew that you were getting resistant to its manipulations. Your energy could not be utilized anymore. Your attention cannot be purchased. And by stepping away, you are not just rejecting it. You are exposing it. You are evidence that there is another, freer path, and the system cannot manage it. So, no, you were not supposed to repair it. You were created to outgrow it entirely and bring others with you. Number 6. Your departure will anger every spirit who has profited from your restraint. Your departure was never going to be silent. Not because you created noise, but because your absence makes noise. When someone bases their identity on your quiet, your healing becomes their crisis. When you chose freedom, it revealed how reliant they were on your bondage. That's why the people you thought you loved began behaving strangely. That's why your mood changed after you stopped reducing yourself. Just to maintain the peace. Your leaving wasn't just a farewell. It was a spiritual earthquake. It rocked every spirit that had previously depended on your being stuck to feel steady. You weren't simply somebody's buddy, child partner, or colleague. You were a power source. For a long time, you were unaware of this. You handed up your energy in bits, unaware that others had learnt to feed off your unhealed portions. They didn't want you damaged, but they liked you unsure since uncertainty implied compliance. It signified available. It meant simple to manipulate. However, once you began selecting for yourself, you became a problem. You began setting limits, and you became too much. You have ceased explaining yourself, and now you're behaving differently. You started healing, and now they are outraged. However, their crime is not your responsibility. This is a confession. It exposes what they were really connected to. Not your love or presence, but your obedience. And walking away from that interaction seems like a betrayal to them. Because they were never interested in your liberation, but rather in what you could accomplish for them while you were imprisoned. That is why quitting for good involves spiritual struggle. Because you're not just walking out of rooms, you are breaking unseen bonds and terminating contracts that you never signed with your consciousness. And absolutely, people will respond. They'll alter the tale. They will label you selfish, unfaithful, and ungrateful. But what they actually mean is, how dare you cease being who I needed you to be so that I could feel in control? That is not your guilt to bear. You were not born to be someone's batteries. You were born to be a sovereign. And you're finally here. Number 7. The crown represents more than simply glory. It proves you did not sell your soul when it was easier. The crown represents more than simply elevation. It's all about endurance. It is about the secret choices you made while no one was looking. The nights you sobbed and prayed. The days you grinned while secretly fighting your own thoughts. The moments you may have jeopardized your soul. Just to feel safer. A bit more visible, a little more liked, but didn't. That is what made you royal. This is what made you untouchable. You did not win because life was good to you. You prevailed because you remained true to your nature. When it would have been simple to sell out. You were given shortcuts. People provided you comfort with strings attached. You were offered possibilities that were promising on the surface, but forced you to compromise something important in yourself. They dangled partnerships in front of you, promising companionship but with the unspoken price of dimming your light. Jobs, lifestyles, and relationships. They all arrived as blessings. But deep down, you knew they were traps. Most individuals accept the bargain. Most people collapse when it gets dark. But you didn't. You peered into the darkness. You chose honesty nevertheless. This is what makes you dangerous. That's why your presence feels different today. Not because you're flawless, but because you're authentic, purchased, and owned. Uncompromised. You've already shown that you can't be lured by comfort or dominated by fear. This is why your crown is more than simply cosmetic. It is symbolic. It is heavenly acknowledgement of a soul that chose truth over falsehoods when the latter were more advantageous. A soul that chose healing over denial because it was more comfortable. A soul that says, I'd rather go alone through suffering than lie to myself in comfort. The world loves power, but heaven honors honesty. That's why this moment is so special. You are not being awarded a crown. You are being verified because you didn't just survive. You passed exams that most people didn't know where they were taking. And now, because it was number 8, the crown now rests on your head, as if it was shaped by your scars. You're going because you've outlived the Matrix's manipulation strategies. You are not going because you are cold-hearted or distant. You are going because the emotional bait has ceased working. The manipulative strategies that kept you hooked. Guilt trips, gaslighting, fear of rejection, and dread of failing people. They've all expired. You've had enough spiritual instruction to recognize a guilt bomb from a mile away. You've developed beyond the survival nervous system. You no longer have the same responses. Where they formerly caused worry, self-doubt, and the need to apologize for your presence. Now there's just quiet, peace, clarity, and it is what worries them the most. You are no longer bound by the dread of being misunderstood. You've already been misinterpreted, misquoted, dismissed, and even maligned. You made it out alive. You've already faced the consequences of being the bad guy in someone else's victim narrative. And when it didn't kill you, something in you triggered immunity. The game has ceased operating. The Matrix used every method available to keep you little. It attempted to turn your empathy into a weapon against yourself. It made you believe that selecting yourself was selfish. It created complete mechanisms to reward your people, appease and punish your borders. However, your neurological system eventually ceased reacting. Not out of numbness, but out of consciousness. You saw through the smoke. You deciphered the playbook. You no longer recoil when they withhold love. You don't seek clarification from individuals who never sought to provide it. You do not argue with forecasts. You've outgrown the whole system that conditioned you to compromise yourself for transient favor. That's why your departure seems so definitive. Because you have nothing left to hold on to. No hook, no opening. They can't reach you with the same strings they used before since you cut them all. And now you're not just walking away. You wander about with immunity. And in a society based on emotional control, it makes you the most unique, dangerous, unshakable, and free. Number 9. You didn't just survive the fire. You were the torch that revealed hidden motives. You were not just going through the motions. You weren't just surviving the fire. It altered you. The heat did not shatter you. It formed you. And now your presence does more than just burn away the falsehoods. It brightens everything around it. People don't know it, but you have always been the mirror. The one they avoided because your energy prevented them from remaining in their delusions. You didn't have to point fingers or expose someone just by being you. Walk in your truth. You compelled them to reveal what they were concealing, even from themselves. And this is why surroundings disintegrate when you leave. It is more than simply a physical absence. It is the loss of the one item that supported their illusory worlds. They don't just miss your companionship. They miss the security your light provided without you there to push them to reflect their actual intentions. Return to them. The holes in their veneer begin to reveal the secrets that were hidden deep under the surface. Begin to advance to the top. The masks they wore and the personalities they created begin to disintegrate. Your departure is more than simply leaving. It is a spiritual unfolding. That's what makes it so disturbing for them. They're not furious with you. This is the truth. You push them to face. You were never intended to fit within their world. Your energy was never intended to connect with their deceptions. Your light was too intense for the darkness they inhabited. And now that you've departed, they have nothing to hide behind. No distractions or illusions. Just the truth. That's why the collapse seems so dramatic. Because when you go, the disguise is broken and all they were pretending to be is revealed. You didn't just survive the fire. You were the very spark that forced people to see themselves for who they really are. And without your light, they are left with just their own shadows. Number 10. You are not moving to start afresh. You are moving because you have been spiritually elevated. This is not a new chapter. It's a whole new novel. You're not going because you failed or because you need a new beginning. You are moving because you have been spiritually elevated. Your path has been nothing more than a series of improvements. And now it's time for you to take on a new mission that aligns with the progress of your soul. Heaven did not just remove you out of a situation that was impeding your progress. It routed you to a higher frequency. Your new surroundings will reflect your increased energy, heightened purpose, and the reality of who you have become. This isn't a relocation. It is a heavenly reassignment. It's similar to when an athlete advances from minor league to big league. The rules of the game remain same, but the stakes have increased. Your voice will carry weight. People will identify who you are and what you stand for. Your entire essence will no longer need to be explained or understood. It will be seen, felt, and honored. No more dimming yourself to blend in or reducing your vibration merely to get by in this new environment. Your energy will be considered precious money. The world will begin to run on the frequency you've been listening to, and the influence you've been silently striving toward will now receive the stage it deserves. You are leaving areas that no longer serve your ultimate purpose. Places where you felt invisible or as if you were holding your breath. You're walking into locations where you can breathe deeply again. You're approaching situations where your sincerity is a benefit, not a liability. And this move is not a coincidence. This is divine logistics at work. You've been elevated from the shadows to the limelight. It is time to rise shamelessly, for the world is ready to see you in all your splendor. A number. They believe you were fleeing, yet you are soaring while they remain stagnant. To others who are still sleeping, you may seem to be running away from your issues, from the individuals who previously claimed a piece of you. But the reality is far more deep and powerful than that. What they don't realize is that you're not fleeing. You're climbing while they're stuck in old habits. What seems to others to be a getaway is in fact a spiritual leap ahead for you. Teleportation to a frequency where your soul may finally flourish. You're not walking away from people. You are leaving densities that cannot maintain your energy. You are leaving behind a world of uncertainty, deception, and dissonance that attempts to keep you bound to the past. Relationships, settings, and surroundings. They all have a function in your development, but they no longer correspond to the frequency of who you have become. And no matter how much you explain, they will never comprehend. Their eyes are still veiled by the mirage of what they believe is normal. While your eyesight has enlarged to perceive the greater reality, the minute you disconnected, it was as if you transcended the very time and space that had previously bound you in place. The system that tried to shape you, mislead you, and confine you couldn't hold your light anymore. So you rose, not because you didn't care, but because you were finally ready to flourish in your true self. The act of leaving is evidence of your progress. You did not run. You developed while others stagnated, caught in the matrix of manipulation. You are rising to new heights. And while they continue to chase their tails in circles, you are on a road of growth. Your energy is too strong to be confined in the same old confines. That is why you may feel as if you have left them behind. In truth, you've merely moved beyond them. And what is ahead for you is nothing less than your divine destiny. You are the first to depart because you refuse to lie to yourself any longer. You are the first to leave. You're racing toward the truth, not away from anything. While everyone else acclimated to the falsehoods, masks, and survival strategies, you made a decision that marked you apart. You've chosen to quit lying to yourself. You broke away from the delusion that everything was okay, even if it wasn't. People around you accepted disorder because it was simpler than confronting the truth that threatened all they valued. But not you. You broke the code by facing the discomfort, sitting with the anguish, and embracing the harsh reality, regardless of how difficult it was to hear, feel, or admit. And that's where your trip started. Most people cannot take radical honesty, and they are certainly unwilling to live by it. But for you, honesty became the trigger. It is the reason your energy has altered. It is the reason you began to view life differently. You have the fortitude to quit pretending to adapt, to stop settling. When you finally looked in the mirror and said, "This is me," for better or worse, you were the first to break away. The exodus did not place in your immediate surroundings. It originated inside you. You choose liberty above comfort. You prioritize sincerity above acceptability. Not only did you liberate yourself, but you also set off a chain reaction. People didn't get it at first. They condemned you for it, calling you selfish and exaggerating. But deep down, they knew you were the mirror they weren't prepared to confront. Your resistance to lie to yourself becomes a mirror, reflecting their own hesitation to confront their own reality. And that is why you are the first to depart. Because by refusing to live in denial, you unleash the very freedom that others are frightened to pursue. You did not just stop the cycle. You began the revolution. Your crown carries the weight of vision. No one around you could bear the weight that you believe is not a burden. It's a gift with responsibilities. Your crown is heavy because it contains visions, truths, and predictions that no one else can understand, much alone bear. The reason you felt lonely was not because you were insufficient. It was because your presence triggered something in others that they were not prepared to tackle. They didn't just reject you. They rejected the spiritual energy you had. The higher frequency triggered discomfort, anxiety, and unresolved truth inside them. You did not just show up in their lives. You showed them the future. That is not something most people are prepared to manage. Your vision is larger than the little areas you previously inhabited. Your intellect has seen, felt, and comprehended things that are beyond this world. You have a frequency that requires more than a normal life. It requires clarity, purpose, and a strong connection to something bigger than oneself. That kind of energy makes people uneasy. It tests them. It serves as a mirror to their stagnation, forcing them to adapt or remain stagnant. Most people find evolution disturbing, so they choose for the comfort of rejection instead. But this rejection isn't about you. It's about their inability to accept the responsibilities your vision entails. You're not just walking around with potential. Your crown is filled with cosmic downloads. You contain the knowledge, guidance, and lessons of previous and future incarnations. This is why your crown feels hefty. It contains galaxies of insight, cosmic wisdom, and divine purpose. You are a vehicle for something much greater than yourself. You were never designed to fit in little settings or have short talks. Your role is much larger than anything this planet has planned. Thank you. So the crown you wear represents more than simply authority. It depicts the spiritual weight of the future, the responsibility for your vision, and the holy obligation you bear. It may seem weighty at times, but the fact is that it was designed for you. You are not merely selected, you started. You weren't searching for attention. You were answering a summons that elicited quiet rather than acclaim. Being picked for a vocation that needed bravery rather than comfort is not a spiritual popularity contest. It is a soul contract. And you signed it with blood, honesty, and a determination to lose everything. Fake to make everything genuine. You did not abandon the world because you were too wonderful for it. You left after seeing what it had become. A system based on deception, manipulation, and incentive for compliance. You walked away because of alignment, not status. And the trek was your introduction. Every betrayal, sorrow, each moment of stillness When you cried for answers, it was your practice ground. While others performed for acceptance, you were breaking. And throughout the breaking, you were being constructed. You consented to go first, not because it was simple, but because you were armed with a truth that could not be contained. That truth does not need validation. It requires room. It needs space to breathe, expand, and create something new. That is what you carry. Not simply information, but a blueprint. You are literally encoded with a blueprint for the new earth. You are the embodiment of holy revolt, the sacred kind that dismantles what no longer serves the soul. You challenge. You are disruptive. You doubt everything. Not because you are stubborn, but because you are aware. And now is the moment to give up on something that has never been done before. Systems are falling because your truth is present. Paradigms are crumbling because your light reveals the rot. This is what initiation looks like. It's messy. It is lonely. It is divine. You were not sent here to embellish the ancient world. You were sent to replace it with something completely raw and authentic, the cornerstone of that new planet. It starts with you as you move away from the past, leaving behind the expectations, constraints, and false narratives that previously bound you. Remember this. Your path is not just your own. It's the start of something far bigger, something that will reverberate long after you've gone on. You are not just breaking free. You are making room for others to follow. Your route is the blueprint, your authenticity, and the map. You were never intended to fit in, and you were definitely never meant to be understood by those who continue to choose the safety of illusion over the risk of reality. This moment, this leaving, is not a loss. It is a cosmic elevation. You're soaring, not escaping. You are moving into your almighty power, bearing the burden of a vision that only a select few can bear. Your crown signifies more than simply authority. It signifies a sacred obligation to develop, create, and lead with uncompromising integrity. You didn't just survive the fire. You become the flame. And in that transition, you spark the route that others will ultimately take. Your departure is not a sign of loss, but rather a proclamation of triumph against the systems that attempted to dominate you. You're not fleeing from anything. You are rising above it. You are here to do more than just exist. You are here to alter the world. You are the first, but not the last. The new earth is being created in your image, and every step you take illuminates the path for others who are willing to follow. So move openly. The crown is substantial. Yes, but it suits you wonderfully. It was built for you. You are a new age pioneer, the catalyst for a spiritual revolution, and the epitome of all mankind is capable of becoming. Your adventure is just starting. And the whole globe. It's not prepared for what comes next, but that's precisely how it should be. If this message struck a chord with you, if you can feel the weight of truth resting in your spirit, don't waste this opportunity. Subscribe to the channel to ensure you don't miss the next installment of this incredible adventure. Hit the like button. If you're ready to unleash your divine power and spread this word to others who need it. Your voice, energy, and deeds matter. So let's multiply them together. Leave a comment below and share your ideas. Let us create a community of truth seekers who are not scared to let go of what no longer serves them and step into the greatness for which they were created, for the world is waiting for you to rise. So let us disseminate the news far and wide. Your trip to the new earth begins today. God bless you.